I'd like to offer up that we take that, why don't we take that particular energy, just a little bit of microphone noise there, take that beautiful, restful energy and allow ourselves to go deep within briefly together. See if with each breath we can allow whatever has transpired in our history, whether in the last 10 minutes or the last 10 years, to be dissolved. As if we had taken all our grievances and had burned them in that burning bowl. And the smoke from that fire dissipates into the clear blue sky where flies the lone wild bird. Its wings beat and help all of that energy just to be moved on, to dissolve into the air. So breath by breath, let us see if we can just feel any sense of difficulty dissolving, disappearing. We will take some time just to have these breaths together without any narration. And I'll join you on the other side of that, allowing grievance to dissipate and love to enter us. Father, Mother, God, Spirit of unity and harmony, may we feel your presence in our hearts, and may we express your power and your presence in our lives. May that ever be our aspiration. Amen. Well, thank you for coming today and meeting us here at this new location, new to us. I know many of you have probably been here before, but I'm acknowledging the journey we all make from different points of the compass to come together. We traveled across the Great Water, as you know, from our home in Snohomish, where we could see Mount Rainier and Venus shining in that dark morning sky. It was gorgeous this morning. I'm a little under the weather, so if you hear some huskiness in my voice or some fogginess in my brain, that's what it's about. Now, I wanted to relate to you that I had an interesting talk with a church member at a different Unity of Whitby, where we go every month. Quite recently, I wanted to tell you about that. Sally and I and another friend went up to Unity of Whitby from our Snohomish County home for the Thanksgiving community feast. We had to wait in line for a ferry. Has anybody here ever waited in line for a ferry?
Yeah.
So it really wasn't that long of a wait, and we descended down the hill that leads to the ferry dock at Mukilteo, one of many lemmings, in a row, heading for the cliff we were going to jump off, or in this case, the boat we were going to board. We were about 3 or 4 cars from the ticket booth when I saw in my rear view mirror that someone in a large vehicle, a Chevy Tahoe it turns out, had just then pulled into line behind us. We were not at the end of the line as we came down the hill, you understand. There were 100, 150 cars behind us, and someone cut in right behind me. I had previously been enjoying the sight of this young couple with a really cute dog in a compact sedan, and suddenly there was this hulking new presence, which had never been there the whole time and had just come in from a side street. Now, you've never been in that situation, have you? I felt my heart quicken. My blood pressure rose a little bit. Indeed, I think my blood pressure is probably getting higher right now when I tell you about this situation, or even if I think about it. I had a plan, though, as soon as I got to the booth. My plan was to be the informer, the snitch, the singing bird. I was going to squeal. I was going to raise the alarm and alert the gendarmes. Now, it took a little effort, because when we got there, the ticket taker unbelievably said to me, "Could you hold on? I need to make a quick call." And I said, "No, this is urgent." I had to tell her before I went rogue and jumped out of the car myself. I felt the impulse to be a vigilante. Quite satisfyingly to me, the ticket taker heard me out, or the ticket taker hated me out. She sprang into action, and I and my companion soon witnessed this big Chevy, and I'm not prejudiced against Chevys. If you drive one, God bless you, but they were the perpetrators in this case. I saw them leave the line and turn around to trudge back up the hill to the end. Would you believe I leaned out of my window and I sang, "Na na, na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye." So there we are at Unity of Whitby, before the Thanksgiving get-together. And this is a story that I chose to relate to a fellow church member in just a moment we had before the meal. I'm not sure what I was thinking, really. Was I imagining that my fellow Unity member would say, "Yeah, that's so-and-so, right, attaboy"? What actually happened was my fellow Unity of Whitbyite said something like this: "Oh, I used to get worked up over stuff like that too. But since I've been attending this church, I kind of let that thing go." Oh. Ouch. Busted. I stand before you, your special speaker today, to note in some shame and with some gallows humor that I have been coming to Unities of different locations for a long time, and my own transformation clearly is notably incomplete. I could wear a sign saying "work in progress," or "pardon my spite, currently remodeling," because my basic and unconscious program seems to tell me, watch your back, they're all out to get you. My golden rule is evidently, do unto others before they do unto you. Well, at least I'm starting to see this approach that I take to life. It's always evident at home, where I'm a big hit, husband in training. I find out that I have a kind of default mood, an automatic mode of being, that is not all sweetness and light. It instead tends toward grumpiness, negativity, and complaining. That's my honest, sort of pre-programmed response. I came by it through heredity and environment. You understand. I'm not saying there's nothing for me to do about it. I'm saying I see the roots. Biologically, we humans are programmed, I would say, to notice whatever's novel in our environment. It could be the saber-toothed tiger, right? You gotta watch out. Protection is a normal response to our environment. Then many of us grow up in families with this tendency reinforced, because we had parents, perhaps, who were relentlessly negative or even abusive. They may have modeled certain attitudes for us: complaining, kvetching, anger, even bigotry and hatred. I'm not saying all of us were raised that way, and I'm not asking for a show of hands, but I bet some of us had some of that in our family background. My parents, anyway, also modeled a sort of hypocrisy. I mean, one of the examples I can think of is when you're getting chewed out. And I told you, I'm telling you for the last time, you'd better clean your room. And the phone rings. Hello? A Course in Miracles has a lesson about giving up what it calls attack thoughts. Sorry, a little more noise. In which we notice that we see the world around us as a vengeful world. And everything we see is a symbol of that vengeance. It's a dark and a sad reality, but when one is angry at a fellow driver or at one's significant other, as we all have been, I'm guessing, at one point or another, it's a useful idea to notice that we may have come into that moment ready for war. I was going to call this talk Defeating the Default. I thought that sounded a little too bellicose. But that's what I want us to think about doing. Looking at whatever the fear, the anger, or the suspicion we unconsciously hold is, and finding a way to change that program. So I recently watched a TED Talk. It was an author, A.J. Jacobs, giving a talk about being thankful. Does anyone know A.J. Jacobs and what he's done? He's done books that he puts himself in certain situations. Like he wrote a book called The Know-It-All. One man's humble quest to become the most intelligent human being in history. And it was, I think, a sort of pre-web era. He read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica over the course of a year. Tried to kind of incorporate all of that. He said his wife hated it because he would keep talking to her about completely abstruse topics. He also wrote a book in which he tried for a year to live by all the Old Testament commandments, everything that's found in the Old Testament. He called it the year of living biblically. And my favorite bit from that is observing the commandment that you have to stone adulterers. He had a friend who confessed that he was in a sort of love affair that could be considered adultery. And so he felt like he had to stone him, so he had a little bit of gravel in a pouch. And when his friend in a park would turn and walk away, he would throw a little bit of gravel at his back. Mr. Jacobs' most recent project is one in which he concluded, like me, that his default setting mood-wise is in the negative part of the scale, and he decided to try to influence his mood by practicing gratitude. He began to spend some time before each meal with his family thanking the farmers, the truck drivers, and so forth for the food that was on the table. He lives in Manhattan, and so he would thank the whole infrastructure. Well, one day his 10-year-old son says, "Dad, you know they can't hear you, don't you? If you were really sincere, you would go thank all these people in person." Jacobs goes, "Oh, book idea." He decided to do just that. In order to make his project more feasible, Jacobs decided to narrow his range from all the food on the family table down to one essential, life-giving item that he knew he could not live without. His morning cup of coffee, of course. He went on a journey of gratitude, thanking his local barista, thanking the truck driver who delivers the coffee beans, the crew who paved the road. He thanked the factory that made the asphalt. Jacobs went to Colombia to thank the farmers who grew the coffee. And when they pointed out they couldn't do the farming without machinery made of steel, he went to Indiana to thank the workers at a steel mill. He called a warehouse that stores coffee beans and thanked the woman in charge of pest control for not letting his coffee get eaten by bugs. And she said, "This is a weird call, but you actually made my day." Since coffee, he found out, is 98.8% water, which is why when Sally says you need to drink more water, I say, I am. It's 98.8% water. I'm having my third cup of it. Since it's made of so much water, he thanked the public utility that brings water into New York City. He said that as he practiced gratitude day by day, he noticed his attitude beginning to shift. He started treating other people more kindly. He said he began to slow down and savor his food and value his time with other people. His world became a friendlier place. And I think even in Manhattan, he would agree, he began to give up attack thoughts. He describes one part of this transformation as fake it till you feel it. If we express that we are grateful, even if our hearts are not, in fact, overflowing with joy and gratitude in that moment, even if we had a bad dream, or we're annoyed with our kid, or the news has us bummed out, if no matter what we express our gratitude and appreciation, our own mood and our own consciousness will begin to change. Fake it till you feel it, at first, seems to turn unity principles a little bit on their head. For unity says we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. But it also says we must live these principles. Knowledge is not enough. Sometimes we think best if we think with our actions. That seems to be the A.J. Jacobs corollary to the unity principles. But it's like they say in the recovery movement. You can't think yourself into a new way of living. You have to live yourself into a new way of thinking. I think that's brilliant. So Jacobs has said his life now has become a kind of gratitude trail. And he encourages people to find these gratitude trails for themselves. And I did a practice I want to tell you about, I'm still engaged in. That was my own foray from the wilderness of my grumpitude to the garden of gratitude. I decided after listening to Jacobs to begin a morning gratitude practice. Now, I started this just after Thanksgiving, in the time period when we're all so busy trying to write a bunch of Christmas cards, probably. I don't know about you guys. Many times we do that like a college student cramming for the exam, right? All like the last minute, and yeah, I love you too, I'm thinking of you. So instead of doing that, I decided that each day I would take a card. Didn't have to be a Christmas card, just a card. I have a whole box of them. You know, we get them for free from Habitat for Humanity, or they find a good one at Trader Joe's or whatever. I had a whole box of cards. I would just pick one card and pick one person of all the people I've known in my life and write a few words of gratitude to them. I've written to guys I was in a men's group with. I've written to many musicians. I've written to people I work with. I've written to an old teacher. I've gotten some replies. Some beautiful, loving replies. Many folks I've not heard back from. That's not the object. It may be that many folks said, oh my God, another piece of junk mail from Beneke. But any response is a bonus. The main thing for me was to acknowledge, some point early in my day, my debt of gratitude to other people. And I began to have a little bit of transformation of how I think and feel and approach. As my guru, Mr. Rogers, puts it, the real issue in life is not how many blessings we have, but what we do with our blessings. Some people have many blessings and hoard them. Some have few and give everything away. Now, a practice like this could expand and encompass not just people we already love, but people we don't have that kind of friendship and loving history with. It could even encompass those we struggle with. If you've ever encountered the Buddhist practice of loving kindness, this will sound familiar. In that practice, we're encouraged first to consider ourselves with loving kindness. To say, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. Could you just say the first line with me for yourself? May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. It's a kind of kindness towards yourself. The practice then invites us to radiate our love and good feeling outward, saying to someone we deeply love, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body and mind. May you be at ease and happy. I'd like to invite everyone just to think of someone you love with a very simple, uncomplicated love, maybe not a sibling or a spouse, but like a grandkid or a puppy, somebody you don't have mixed up difficult feelings with. And just say, may you be filled with loving kindness to them now. May you be filled with loving kindness. This sentiment in the practice gets extended to those we deeply love. Then to those we know and care for, but have less of a connection with, perhaps. Then to those we perhaps have no particular feeling about. The bank clerk or the person I passed as I drove to work who was waiting for the bus. The practice finally invites us to extend this loving kindness to difficult people in our lives. The coworker we just can't stand. The store clerk who always seems to be in a bad mood. Hate getting in that line, but it's the shortest line. Oh well, here we go. And then finally to whoever we actually see as enemies. Politicians. Angry people on the freeway. Even the ferry line cutter. Wow. We say internally, may you be filled with loving kindness. Say it with me for somebody you don't like. May you be filled with loving kindness.
Donald Trump.
May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. We heard you, by the way. May you be well in body and mind. May you be at ease and happy. For Jesus, the Prince of Peace, whose birth we just welcomed 3 weeks back or something, said this, as quoted in Matthew, "You've heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. For God makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the ferry line cutters do the same?" I think it's something different in the original, but that's my translation. "And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, well, what more are you doing than others?" Jesus, I believe, is instructing us here to extend our love, our good energy, to everyone, not just the people in our clique, those who we think are cool and whose approval we seek. If we want the peace that transcends understanding, we have to transcend our preferences and learn to radiate love like little stars, shining their light in all directions. As the Sufi poet Hafiz put it, I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. As Sal mentioned at the top of the service, we have been experiencing what people experienced from time immemorial, that as we age, some of our friends jump off the planet before we're ready to let them go. And we attended the celebration of life for our friend Craig not long ago. Craig was a prominent member of Unity of Everett, where we also show up and have gotten to know the community. At his celebration of life, church members and family members spoke so highly of him, as well they should have. And yet I found myself wondering if there was not some portion of their appreciation left unexpressed during Craig's lifetime. Now, I know that Craig had many moments of love and appreciation between himself and other people. He was a beautiful soul, and he allowed that love to flow freely. Still, how many of us have given or have received only a fraction of the positive comments that are in our hearts, or that are held in our friends' hearts, that would come out once we were but gone? How many of us reserve our praise, budget out our loving kindness as if to express it would be to lose it, when the opposite is what is true? When we give our love away, it comes back redoubled. I've got to quote Mr. Rogers once more. He said, "I believe that appreciation is a holy thing. When we look for what's best in a person we happen to be with at the moment, we're doing what God does all the time." Isn't that cool? So in loving and appreciating our neighbor, we're participating in something sacred. We are called to spread love, appreciation, and gratitude, to do at least some of the time what God does all the time. So the invitation is present for all of us to find time for some gratitude practice. I mean, you probably don't need it as much as I do. Your probably default is a lot higher than mine. But if you feel drawn to it, find some way to change your consciousness through gratitude practice. Writing a card, as I've been doing. Remembering another soul who loved you into loving. Talked you into talking. Sang you into singing. Taking a moment to find out someone you thought of as an enemy could be a friend. Or simply holding the thought in your private prayer, may others be filled with loving kindness. May they be safe from dangers. May they be well and happy. The invitation is there for us to do this not just with the people we think of as our friends and beloveds, but even with the people we think of as our enemies. Let us take a risk and see if we can love someone into loving. Let us take this time, which is all the time we have, to be generous with our love, to let our loving kindness flourish and grow, and to cultivate the peace that passes all understanding as we practice gratitude together.